Dolly Parton has spent decades winning over fans all around the globe with her irresistible voice and charisma as the unrivaled queen of country music and America's sweetheart. However, few have ever heard the other half of her story, which lies behind that mesmerizing grin. A web of ill will, treachery, and fabled feuds that were never reported in the media. It appeared like everyone loved her while she was on stage or in front of the camera. They talked about her as if she were perfect, smiled at awards ceremonies alongside her, and gushed over her in interviews. However, things were different behind the scenes. Slammed doors, hurtful comments, and friendships shattered. Nobody wanted to collaborate with her again, according to one singer. Someone else attempted to take her most popular song. The truth about the 5 vocalists Dolly could never tolerate to work with has finally emerged, despite her best efforts to keep it all secret. Is this the truth about what went down behind closed doors? And what gives some of those long, simmering wounds their lingering bite? You will have a whole new appreciation for Dolly Parton after you hear the truth. Her meteoric climb to fame is truly remarkable. Few people know the drama that lies beneath her famously huge blonde hair, glittering costumes, and heart-melting beautiful voice. Dolly Parton has had an incredible journey, full of ups and downs, from a poor girl from rural Tennessee to one of the most legendary figures in music history. She is well known for her unfailing optimism and her reputation as a queen of kindness. However, even the most charming performers, like Dolly Parton, have had their share of feuds with their peers. You need to know Dolly to grasp with whom she had disagreements. A lady who, despite her best efforts, is always caught in the middle of a scandal. Dolly Rebecca Parton came into this world in a little cabin on Locust Ridge, Tennessee, on January 19, 1946. 12 children squeezed into a little mountain home as she grew up, and the family was loving but struggling. Even though he was illiterate, her father Lee Parton worked hard as a farmer and construction worker. However, Dolly insisted he was the brightest man she had ever met. Dolly was born to A.V. Lee, who had 12 children before reaching the age of 35 and who instilled in her daughter a strong devotion to faith, music, and storytelling. For the Partons, music was more than just a pastime, it was a means of subsistence. As a result of financial constraints, the kids had to get creative by learning to sing in church and practicing harmony on the front porch. The Dolly Partons saw her talent at a young age. She made her radio and television debut in Knoxville at the tender age of 10, and she quickly moved on to play at the Grand Ole Opry. She gathered all of her belongings the day after her 1964 high school graduation and headed for Nashville, Tennessee, unprepared save for her natural skill and lofty aspirations. She got her start penning songs for other musicians. Dolly, however, had other desires. The limelight was what she craved. Her 1967 single, Dumb Blonde, was her debut country single. She was more than just a lovely face. This smart song proved it. In the same year, she became a member of the Porter Wagner Ensemble. It was at that instant that everything shifted. Dolly Parton's weekly performances captivated millions of viewers. Fans couldn't get enough of Dolly's captivating charisma, harmonies, and chemistry in her duets with Porter Wagner, which were instant hits. At around 970 seconds in, she broke away from her entourage and began an unstoppable solo career. The 1973 anthem Jolene was followed in 1974 by the global smash hit I Will Always Love You. Then, years later, Whitney Houston covered it, and it became one of the most popular songs of all time. It should be noted that Dolly retains ownership of the rights. In keeping with her character, she never boasted about the millions she garnered from that single song. Dolly was in every movie, radio station, and goods store by the 980-second mark. She proved she was more than simply a country singer by starring in 9 to 5 with Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin. She was an actress in her prime. Thereafter, in 986, her own theme park, Dollywood, opened in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. In an effort to give back to her hometown and help strengthen the local economy, Dolly constructed an amusement park when other celebrities were purchasing boats. Her friendliness is genuine, but don't assume she's innocent. Dolly is among the most astute businesswomen in the entertainment industry. She is a multi-Grammy and Lifetime Achievement Award winner who has penned thousands of songs and is now a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Amazingly, she managed it all while growing up in a waterless environment. Furthermore, she continues to repay. Dolly Parton has made it her mission to give every child the gift of literacy, by donating millions of books to kids all across the globe through her imagination library. Dolly has kept up her reputation as lovely, modest, and uninterested in drama throughout the years. A Southern angel, though, has her limitations. There are tales of jealousies, people who fought with her, disregarded her, or attempted to steal her thunder behind all the glitz and glamour. And Dolly will never forget, that much is certain. Despite her outward smiles, Dolly Parton dealt with her fair share of feuds, tension, and resentment behind the scenes. Among the first and most complex was her feud with the man who had been instrumental in her career's launch, but had since attempted to seize control of it. One of the most spectacular breaks in country music history occurred when what began as a strong collaboration quickly turned into a rift. Dolly Parton and Porter Wagoner are adversaries. Even before Dolly became a household name around the world, Porter Wagoner was a household name in country music. As a result of his charisma, stage presence, and heartwarming singing voice, Porter had amassed an enormous fan base. At 1960 seconds in, he had become the face of the hit American country music show, The Porter Wagoner Show. As he performed, Porter wowed the crowds with his flamboyant outfits and infectious enthusiasm. When he wasn't performing, he was crisp, businesslike, and quite conventional. He read the crowd like a book and recognized exceptional talent in Dolly Parton. Fans were not pleased when Dolly replaced the popular Normaine on the Porter Wagoner Show. Others refused to accept the change and booed her during performances. But Porter was there to support her, and Dolly, ever courteous and resolute, maintained her poise and concentrated on demonstrating her worth. Their partnership clicked right away. Their chemistry was evident, and their harmonies were enchanting. They became one of the most beloved duos in country music and produced over a dozen top 10 hits together. Their on-screen chemistry was undeniable. However, there were beginning to be fractures beneath those grins. What is the issue? Just singing duets with Dolly wasn't enough for Porter. He desired to have dominion over her professional life. The majority of the important economic decisions were made by him, and he oversaw her performances and the songs they recorded. Dolly Parton is a strong, independent lady, so she would never be able to stay under someone's thumb. The late, great Dolly Parton was more than meets the eye. She had her own aspirations, was an independent thinker, and could write music. Much beyond recording duet albums and making TV appearances, her aspirations extended far and wide. She was a good sport for a while, but as her star began to rise, she wanted more and more independence. Over time, Dolly felt stifled by the monotony and began penning songs that didn't mesh well with the Porter and Dolly formula. All she really desired was the ability to express herself freely and simply. Porter had a hard time providing her with that, though. In retrospect, Dolly acknowledged that he struggled to perceive her as on par with him. Although he had first granted her a platform, it soon started to seem more like a prison. Nonetheless, Dolly took her time getting up and leaving. The amount she owed him was clear, and she did her best to make amends. In spite of this, the strain was palpable by 1973. In 1974, after a year on the show, she decided to leave the Porter Wagoner Ensemble. It appeared like a casual get-together to the outside world, but things were far from over behind closed doors. Porter returned, accompanied by attorneys, 5 years after she had departed. He claimed that Dolly had been unfaithful and owed him $3,000 million in 1979 in the form of management fees, show expenses, and a portion of her earnings after the show ended. Dolly was taken by surprise. The lawsuit struck her as an act of profound betrayal, because Porter had been an influential figure in her early career and a mentor to her. In keeping with her character, the conflict escalated into a media frenzy, complete with whispers and tension coursing through the business world. "I will not fight dirty," Dolly said. Out of court, she discreetly settled the dispute. She mentioned later on that she had no desire to fight him. Her only desire was to be liberated. She was emotionally exhausted from the whole thing. Despite all, she still cared for Porter, who had been instrumental in her ascent to stardom. Despite the fact that they had created history together, he ultimately refused to let her leave without a struggle. When Dolly was considering leaving the program, she convinced Porter she would stay for 5 years, as she stated in an interview. 5, then 6, and finally 7 had passed. Because it was going to derail his show, he simply couldn't handle it. There were a lot of emotional ties that bonded us together, but he wouldn't listen. It was all conveyed in that confession. Money was never the only issue in their feud. The roots were considerably deeper. It revealed a hitherto unseen aspect of Porter Dolly, and it really saddened her. Nonetheless, changes started to occur with the passage of time. After years of tension and silence, Dolly and Porter began to reconcile by the late 1980s. Afterwards, in 2002, Dolly accomplished an unexpected feat. She was present when the Country Music Hall of Fame inducted Porter Wagoner. She stood up on stage and expressed her gratitude for his support during her life's challenges. Porter went just a few weeks after Dolly visited him in the hospital in 2007 when he was battling lung cancer. The news devastated Dolly. She didn't want the attention or accolades, so she arranged a private tribute concert at Dollywood to honor the man who had supported her ambitions, despite his attempts to stifle them in the past. To this day, Dolly's relationship with Porter Wagoner is still a watershed moment in her career, one that had an impact on her that the general public may never perceive. Still, that's not the end of the tale. The next individual on Dolly's hit list stunned the world in addition to hurting her. Contrasting with Linda Ronstadt is Dolly Parton. They were the ideal combination, with Emmylou Harris as their captain. The iconic trio record was created by three strong women who came together. Their harmonization was like magic, and the result was classic songs that make people shiver even now. Dolly Parton and Linda Ronstadt's relationship, in particular, wasn't as idyllic as it appeared on screen. In the middle of 170 seconds, what started as a musical sisterhood almost became one of the most talked about feuds in country music. Emmylou Harris and Dolly Linda were both well-established celebrities by that point. Record label politics and scheduling conflicts prevented them from realizing their shared dream of making music together. Despite their profound admiration for one another, the album Trio, which had been much anticipated, was not published until 1987. The album became a smashing hit right away. It was a Grammy winner, #1 on the country charts, and a platinum seller. Things were anything but calm in the studio, despite how they appeared to be on the outside. Dolly preferred to record songs in as few as 1 or 2 takes, which contributed to her renowned spontaneity. Linda, in contrast, was extremely detail-oriented. Every sound may be fine, tuned by her for hours. It was common for Emmylou to act as a mediator between the two. Later on, Dolly reflected on her experience working with Linda, and how it was like interacting with a studio diva who was obsessed with detail. Dolly admitted that she felt the want to scream at Linda at times. Everyone could see the friction between them, because their creative approaches were so different. Nonetheless, in 1994, the trio attempted again with Trio 2, but the release was postponed for years due to schedule conflicts and disagreements with record labels. Trio 2's 1999 release confirmed the enchantment, but did little to foster camaraderie. Devastation had already taken place. Dolly and Linda had gone from being friendly rivals to bitter enemies. By this point, Linda had become very vocal about her dissatisfaction with Dolly's unreliability throughout the project. They had achieved history together, but there were wounds from their partnership as well. During an interview, Linda Ronstadt was very forthright regarding Dolly Parton, claiming that Dolly frequently rescheduled or arrived late to recording sessions. She freely confessed that collaborating with Dolly was excruciating. It was tough to work together since, as Linda says, Dolly was chronically late and seemed a bit irritable. However, the problem extended beyond mere tardiness. To Linda, it seemed like Dolly didn't appreciate all the hard work that went into finishing the project. In her opinion, Dolly was less concerned with the group's projects and more with advancing her solo career. And their mutual disapproval was a result of such mentality. A great rift opened up in their partnership as a result of the subsequent strain. Linda finally made it plain that she was never going to collaborate with Dolly again. She went so far as to claim that the otherwise enjoyable and creative event had been marred by Dolly's incompetence. Time did, however, ease some of the animosity as the years passed. There were hints of reconciliation from both women despite the drama. Nonetheless, an air of slight uneasiness pervaded their interactions. Neither of them appeared to have completely forgotten what had transpired. Although they refrained from being overtly antagonistic, they also failed to make any significant efforts to mend their friendship. One of the most legendary partnerships in country music, the trio's legacy lives on. Despite the lovely harmonies, Linda's remarks remained, casting a pall on the possibility of an enduring sisterhood. Anyone who hears the name Elvis Presley immediately thinks of the legendary musician who revolutionized rock and roll. Dolly Parton, king of country music, is another superstar thanks to her storytelling and songwriting, two legendary figures each. On one occasion, they were almost united. Unfortunately, disagreements over a single iconic song derailed what may have been a groundbreaking partnership. I Will Always Love You, Dolly Parton's classic melody, was the starting point. This song, which she wrote in 1973, held a special place in her heart. She decided to go it alone after leaving her longtime mentor Porter Wagoner, and that decision served as inspiration. One of the most famous country songs of all time was born out of a sincere farewell. Each song contains a little bit of Dolly's spirit. Upon its release, the song became an instant hit, solidifying Dolly's status as one of the all-time greats. Elvis Presley's entourage had taken note, though she was unaware of it. It was the king's desire to have the song recorded. Midway through the year 1970, Elvis continued to be a musical powerhouse, famous for covering the songs of other artists and making them legendary. When Elvis expressed interest in covering Dolly's song, she was understandably overjoyed. The catch, though, was an issue that would alter the course of events. Dolly Parton was quickly put in an unenviable situation by Elvis's infamous manager, Colonel Tom Parker, who was known for demanding enormous percentages of the publishing rights for whatever song Elvis sang. Dolly Parton had only recently begun to gain recognition as a songwriter. She was self-assured even back then. Dolly Parton stood firm when Elvis Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, wanted half of the publishing rights to every song Elvis recorded. She wasn't motivated just by financial gain. The issue was one of deference to her expertise. She had put in too much effort to allow anyone to profit from her originality. Thus, Dolly maintained her position. "No small feat," she said Parker. "This is the most important copyright in my entire publishing company, and I can't do that." The choice was not made lightly. The incident severely wounded Dolly, she later confessed. Even though she had the utmost respect for Elvis, she couldn't help but feel that the arrangement was rigged against her. If Dolly is to be believed, Elvis was deeply upset by her decision. He was really excited to record "I Will Always Love You," since he loved it so much. Dolly admitted that she felt bad about rejecting him, but that she was aware that giving in once might invite others to take advantage of her in the future. An argument about work matters quickly escalated into a more personal one. Even though Dolly maintained her composure, the consequences were felt. It hurt her heart as she thought Elvis never really forgave her for declining. While he never brought it up in conversation, she did notice a shift in their dynamic subsequently, and she went on to characterize him as an emotionally fragile soul. However, Dolly's choice was correct in the end. Years down the road, Dolly Parton made millions from royalties due to Whitney Houston's rendition of "I Will Always Love You," which became one of the most famous songs of all time. Even though she and Elvis had their differences, Dolly has stated that she will never regret being firm. Although it was not an easy decision, she showed her strength, integrity, and belief in the worth of her art by turning down the king of rock and roll. The graciousness, modesty, and generosity of Dolly Parton have always been her trademarks. A lady who never allows herself be affected by drama. But in 2008, she was finally pushed to her breaking point by one. Celebrity radio host Howard Stern made a name for himself by saying and doing things that the average person would never dream of. By the 1980 and 90-second mark, the Howard Stern Show had exploded in popularity, with some praising its frankness and others criticizing its nastiness. Stern was brave in the eyes of many. Some found him insulting. Dolly Parton was the object of one of his most outrageous antics in 2008. Stern and his crew crafted a distressing radio program by splicing together excerpts from Dolly Parton's audiobook, My Life and Other Unfinished Business, to construct a phony interview that gave the impression that Dolly was making incredibly offensive, racist, and foul comments. They used her actual voice to make obscene comments about her body and other musicians, such as Linda Ronstadt and Kenny Rogers. The joke was far from hilarious. Despite its intended tone, it was unbecoming, disgusting, and cruel. It was a calculated assault on Dolly's reputation, and while Stern's staff may have laughed it off on air, it was terrible for her and her followers. Dolly, who rarely addresses controversial topics, was devastated and enraged. According to her rare public speech, she has never felt such shock, hurt, and humiliation in her life. The things that Howard Stern has done to me are unbelievable. Under no circumstances would I ever utter such obscene words. The episode was criticized harshly, and she even suggested the possibility of legal action, stating, "If there was ever going to be a lawsuit, it's going to be over this." The response was swift. the audience was incensed. Radio stations playing country music and Dolly's lifelong fans flocked to online forums and comment sections to defend her reputation. Her ally counted on the support of those beyond the rural scene as well. Howard Stern, however, never bowed down. He failed to express regret or apologize, claiming it was all in good fun and that people were being overly sensitive. He chose to laugh it off instead. Even though he saw it as satire, Dolly took it very personally, and the hurt it created was difficult to overcome. Dolly Parton and Howard Stern broke up after the terrible encounter in 2008. As usual, Dolly acted morally. In interviews, she refrained from publicly criticizing or insulting him. She let her admirers and the general public do the talking and moved on. People couldn't get over what had happened, and the pain continued for a long time. However, everyone was caught unawares by an utterly surprising development. Dolly Parton stunned audiences in 2023 when she made her first appearance on Howard Stern's show. Even though the scandal had occurred 15 years ago, nobody had thought she would ever set foot in his studio. Dolly, however, was on a mission. The CD rock star, her latest rock offering, was being promoted. This was the time to break new ground if ever there was one. Stern was courteous, which caught everyone off guard. He was so impressed by her enthusiasm and remarkable voice that he lauded her, describing her as a legend. Unlike before, he refrained from being sarcastic. However, the underlying tension between them was difficult to see. Dolly seemed more concerned with getting her business done than with seeking forgiveness. However, Dolly once again demonstrated to the world the epitome of professionalism and elegance. Looking back was not something she did. In her own words, she rewrote the narrative. The Wilco man Jeff Tweedy followed. Open criticism of Dolly Parton is unusual. When it comes to the music industry, she's nearly unbeatable. However, Tweedy, who is renowned for his incisive remarks and lyrical songs, spared no expense. Despite his esteem for alt country and indie music, his remarks regarding Dolly caused quite a stir. Tweedy acknowledged Dolly's historical significance in country music in an interview, but he wasted no time in criticizing her songwriting, describing it as shallow. She was accused by him of not having the emotional depth or abstractness to write meaningful lyrics. He thought Dolly's strength was in her infectious songs, rather than her deep narratives. He went so far as to say that her attractiveness and public persona were more important than the quality of her poems, drawing comparisons to other lyricists he thought had more significant work. I love Dolly Parton. I know she wrote Jolene and I Will Always Love You on the Same Day. Tweedy famously quipped, and I think she should have stopped after Jolene. His intention was not to be nasty, but his remarks seemed condescending, particularly against a woman whose music has influenced many people. Upon hearing the insults, Dolly reportedly became upset, according to subsequent reports. Lyrics have always held a special place in Dolly's heart. There is an intangible quality to her music that originates from her emotions, her experiences, and her existence that cannot be quantified through scientific means. That must have been painful to have another artist challenge you. However, she refrained from publicly responding, as is typical with Dolly. She could have skipped it. After all, her music has touched and moved many people all across the globe. With hits like 9 to 5 and Coat of Many Colors, her music has transcended decades and musical styles. Nobody can deny her impact as a songwriter, and criticism won't change that. Dolly Parton remains the same, humbly gracious, throughout all of her feuds, criticisms, and controversies. Aside from public insults, she has also been the target of lawsuits. Still, every time she comes out on top. Therefore, what is your opinion? Out of all these feuds, which one had the most impact on Dolly's career?